So, with NFL free agency coming up soon, or the quote-unquote legal tampering period, which
There
I
you go.
believe begins in, I think, 3 or 4 days as of recording this. Will probably be happening in a day or two after this comes out. Um, it's upon us. There's a list of the best free agents that we've pulled some names from. We're just going to go through, figure out who they're going to go to, if they're going to stay, maybe how much money they're going to get, what a deal might look like, if a team is going to take a chance on them at all. Aaron Rodgers. But we'll go through all of this. I think we've got like 7 or 8 players, so knowing how long we usually take with these free agency segments, we'll jump right into it. Um, let's start. There's a lot of interesting receivers on the market, not just the trade market, like we might have just talked about with DK, but lots of interesting free agents. And I think the best one is probably Chris Godwin, who has been, I believe, a career-long Buck.
Yep.
And it'll be interesting to see if he comes back or not. I haven't necessarily heard rumors as to whether he is or not. But for any team that gets him, that is immediately one of your best receivers, if not your best receiver. He's been wide receiver 2 for a while, but he's definitely wide receiver 1 quality, I would say.
He's been wide receiver 2 because he's been stuck behind one of the most consistent wide receivers, arguably, of all time. Like, I mean, that's not a shot at Chris Godwin. He's done all he can. he's gonna be a heck of a player for wherever he goes. Honestly, it kind of feels like it's a good time for him in a way. I don't know how old he is actually off the top of my head, but
he's 29.
Okay, that makes sense. I figured he had to be getting up there. Wherever he goes, like you said, he's going to be a top guy. And if it is a contender, hopefully he can get a shot at winning another Super Bowl. And hopefully do it as the number 1 guy. Because, I mean, the unfortunate thing with those Tom Brady, Mike Evans years is, he's just never going to be considered as the top receiver on any of those teams. This is kind of it's kind of like a legacy thing, is kind of what I'm trying to say about Godwin. I think it's a good chance for him to really define what he's going to be remembered as a receiver in the league.
Yeah. And it's the kind of thing where it's like you just want to see him, because you're right, it has just been because he's been behind Mike Evans, a player who's going to go to the Hall of Fame. It's no discredit to him, but I wonder if it's in the back of his head. It's like, do I want to be a number 1 somewhere, and where would that place be? So I think there's a couple interesting options. I think a lot of the teams that have the most cap room are also teams that need wide receivers. And just to kind of compare to the Bucks only have about $8 million in cap space, so that might be a bit difficult to accommodate. But you have a team like the Patriots who could take him on at $125 million in cap space. A team like the Chargers is probably my number 1 destination for him, just because it's almost infamous how bad their receivers are. They have $90 million. The Raiders also looking for receivers at $85 million. I think those 3 top teams that have the most cap space, like taking a chance on a guy like Chris Godwin, feels like a no-brainer for those teams.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially the Chargers. You get a guy like Godwin with Herbert, that's going to create some magic. I mean, even with the Patriots, I mean, with May coming up at this point, he's definitely going to have a pretty solid second year, assuming there isn't a slump. I think no matter what happens with Godwin, he's going to have options, and he's going to have plenty of suitors. I think just about any contending team that's looking for receivers, heck, I mean, I'm assuming the Bills are in cap hell, knowing just how this type of thing usually goes, but they would be a team that would make a lot of sense for a guy like Godwin. They have needed a number 1 since Diggs walked out the door, right? So, I mean, there's going to be a lot of options for him. He's going to be a really interesting guy to watch for sure.
Yeah. The only thing I will refute with your Bills thing is the exact point you brought up. They are indeed in cap hell.
Well, there you go.
They are the worst team. They're the worst team in the NFL, other than the Saints.
Oh, well,
$8 million over the cap. I think they probably wouldn't even, just because their wide receiver by committee has honestly worked so well in their favor that I don't necessarily think they're like chomping at the bit to get a number 1, especially if you don't have any space for it.
And I don't necessarily mean that they need to. I just think it would be something that, if the money worked, I don't really see why they wouldn't at least kind of, throw in a
consider it.
feeler. Yeah, consider it, throw in a
Yeah.
feeler. Like, but yeah, as you said, money doesn't. So there you go. But yeah.
We can move on to another receiver. There's a lot of receivers. That's the other thing for a team like the Bills, where it's like, if you don't get a Chris Godwin, you can also get a guy like Devontae Adams, who just got cut by the Jets, I believe today. So
I think so.
this is a really interesting one because the podcast that I listen to likes to joke that Devontae Adams just has no autonomy. And it's like, well, where's Devontae Adams going to go? Well, where's Aaron Rodgers going to go? And then I'll follow him there with the whole,
Well,
like, the whole
I'm not
spectacle
gonna
of it
lie.
with the Jets.
That's the thought I had too. Because I mean,
Yeah, but it's because it's kind of true. It's like it's the spectacle of it with the Jets. You wonder if, I mean, that went so poorly. You just if I'm in Devontae Adams' shoes, I'm running as far away from Aaron Rodgers as I possibly can because I think your Hall of Fame career gets tainted by association with his like just fading talent and just otherwise despicable nature. But I don't know. I hope he goes somewhere else where he can shine with an actually good quarterback. Because yeah, if he just follows Rodgers to like Vegas or something, I guess that wouldn't make a lot of sense
to New
considering
York
they just came from
potentially.
there.
I remember hearing that was in the rumor mill.
Oh, like the other New York. Like
No,
they
yeah,
just,
that's what I
they
mean.
just go across the
Yeah, go across the whatever the difference is.
go across the
obvious I haven't-
stadium. Like
Yeah, I guess so. They do share stadiums, so there you go.
just wait
But,
for them to change the colors over. But
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting because I mean, Devontae Adams, he is on the older side, right? I don't know how old he is now, but he's got to be in his 30s. So I'd say this is probably the last decently weighty contract he'll get, if it even is that he's 32. So yeah, this is probably his last like big payday before he's just kind of chasing around. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes and for how long. Again, with the receiver needs, I think it's a lot of those same teams, like I think the Patriots, the Chargers, and you almost wonder if a team further down this list, Jacksonville, just cut Christian Kirk. Does he go to Jacksonville or even to Pittsburgh? Has quite a bit of cap space, or the Bengals. Like, there's some interesting possibilities there if he doesn't just follow Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I think the hope has to be that he doesn't, because I think that's a lot more interesting at this point, honestly. We've kind of seen the Adams Rodgers experiment enough. I think if they go to the Giants, I don't think there's going to be anybody who is going to be going, well, Giants are an instant contender. I don't think that's going to happen anymore. The expectations probably won't be high just because of what we saw last year. I mean, I was one of the people who had the Jets very highly rated. And even with that being said...
And #1 seed in the AFC.
Oh, I'm sure I did. Because, I mean, just looking at their team on paper, they looked really solid. And hell, if the Giants get Rodgers, they're going to have a lot... And Adams, for that matter. They're going to have a lot of nice-looking pieces on paper. But I think if we've learned anything about Rodgers, it doesn't necessarily matter what's on paper. I think... I don't know. I just don't think that expectations would be very high for that type of experiment. And for Adams, I mean, sure, you love playing with your buddy, but at this point, you're 32 years old. I feel like you're 32, you haven't really won anything.
Thing. It's a reputation thing at this point.
A reputation, sure, but it's also a thing of, I want a Super Bowl. Like, he's played on great teams in the past, sure. Like, a lot of those Packers teams looked like Super Bowl contenders, but... The big thing is he still doesn't have a ring. Is he going to get one with the Giants? Probably not. Is he going to get one with the Raiders? Probably not. So, I mean, if I'm him, I feel like at this point, you got to go for a team that's already, like, a set-in-stone contender. Not a contender that becomes a contender because you're there. A team that is already won. A team that's going to be in those contending spots, whether you're there or not. I feel like... At this point, that's the position Adams should be putting himself in.
I agree. Before we move on to the next player, let me just throw out some possibilities that are kind of in line with that idea of a pre-made contender. This one is conditional on whether they are able to get something done with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, because if they do that, then they won't have room for it. But I mean, the Joe Burrow to Devontae Adams connection, if they can't get that done, is that something that's interesting? There is also Pittsburgh is somewhat interesting. They're more on the fringe, but the one that is like is sneaky crazy how they have this much cap space. The Detroit Lions, is that
Ooh.
something? They have
That would be
$51
a
million
fuck you to the Packers.
Yeah, they have $51 million in cap space, which is, I think, more than enough to get a potential deal done with a guy like Devontae Adams.
How much was
Adams, yeah,
Adams?
again,
How much do you think they'd have to pay Adams? I'm kind of putting you on the spot with that, but
I don't think
much.
they'd have to pay. No, I think with the Jets cutting him, I think they saved something crazy like $32 million against the cap. It's not going to be nearly as much. I think I had anticipated being about half that number. So I think having $51 million in cap that gets it done. Are the Lions wanting to? They're not really a team known for taking like big free agent swings. So who knows? And then the last one, he could also just go back to the Packers. So that's another interesting one.
I have
They
heard
also
that
have room to do it. Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see where he goes. If we want to move on, I feel like the logical place to take it is just to continue the conversation about Aaron Rodgers.
It probably
You
is.
brought up you brought up the Giants.
Yeah.
My favorite place for him to go is the unemployment line, but I don't think I'm going to get my wish.
No, probably not.
But it's just like, I think the thing with Rodgers is just like, to what purpose does he serve as a quarterback in today's NFL after what we saw last season? He wasn't like god awful, but he was clearly not the same player. And it's not going to be the same thing like it was when he came to the Jets, where it was just a coronation. Let's make Hard Knocks all about him, and just people are falling to their knees at the greatness of A-Rod. It's not going to be that. He's going to be. It almost feels like the situation that Russell Wilson was in after the Broncos. Maybe not quite as bad, but he definitely has something to prove. I don't even know, like in terms of quarterback needy teams, what he would like. Raiders. Maybe.
Him on a Pete
I don't
Carroll
know.
team would be funny.
That would be funny. I wouldn't know whether to cheer or scream.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, just for that. Oh, God.
Yeah. I think the Giants one is interesting, but it's like that also feels like not the right move.
Does it make sense to keep him in New York? Almost like, is that too?
No.
It seems like it's.
No, it does not.
Like, I feel like we've. If I'm Rodgers, I guess I'm just looking at it as the Jets stint was so shit that I want to go to the opposite side of the country if I can. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to stay in the same stadium. I want to get the hell out of Dodge, and I think I think that maybe is part of it. But who knows? Maybe the logic is a big market team getting a big market quarterback, arguably, even if he was maybe more of one 3 years ago. I don't know. I think.
But funnily enough, I mean, I agree with you that he is a big market quarterback. Funnily enough, in the smallest market in the NFL.
Yeah, like it's. I don't know. I don't know. I think with Rodgers, it's such a tough spot for him at this point. Like, it's hard to look at him as anything other than he's just a massive risk at this point. A team like the Giants might be willing to take that risk, potentially, depending on what route they want to take this whole post-Daniel Jones era. But I don't know. I think that I feel bad for whoever gets him, in a sense, because I feel like we've been kind of waiting for A-Rod to retire for a good while now. Like, I was just I had to look up his age because I was curious, and 41, I swear I would have guessed like 43. 44 even.
Yeah.
Like, I would have guessed a lot older. Like, it feels like he's been in his 40s for the last 5 years.
Well, yeah, he was drafted like when we were born, basically. Like, he was drafted in 2005. He's been around for a long ass time.
Are you shutting down a computer behind you? What's happening back there? Is that you?
Is it me? Who knows? I don't know. I wiggled a mouse and stuff started happening. I'm not
Okay.
quite sure what's going on.
You were not reacting at all. I was curious if there was some janitor trying to shut down your whole like operation there.
I mean, I am in a public space. People do come and go. Somebody walked right past me like a second ago, but
Oh really? Oh.
yeah, they're just giving me the stare, but that's okay. Um, anyway, we can move on to if we want to talk about the better quarterback, dare I say, better former Jet quarterback
True.
in this free agent class, Sam Darnold.
Probably
This one is really
seeing
interesting
less
because,
ghosts.
yeah, I mean, other than those last two games, I think those last two games of his season decreased his free agent value by about $10 million, because that game against the Lions and then the playoff game were vintage Jets Sam Darnold, where he just looked uncomfortable and not in the right spot, and so that's got to scare some teams away. But I still do think, based on his performance last year, he is the only quarterback where you look at him and say, maybe this isn't a bridge quarterback situation. Maybe this is somebody we can actually have as a franchise guy.
Yes.
What teams does that look like for you? Because I don't know.
Any team that thinks that they should be considering Aaron Rodgers should be considering Sam Darnold. I think it's about as simple as that. I think, and it's funny that that's the world Aaron Rodgers gets to live in now. That he gets to pick up Sam Darnold's sloppy seconds. But I seriously hope that's how this works. I honestly think that 4 quarterbacks on this market, Darnold should get the first pick. Giants immediately come to mind just because they're a team that is going to. I don't even think they have a quarterback on their roster. Does Sam Darnold want to go back to New York? Probably not, but you never know, I guess. I don't hate the Raiders. I think that's another one where there's a lot. They have a lot to prove. New coach. I think it's the type of thing where it almost makes too much sense, at least to me. I don't know. I don't know how you'd feel about him going to the Raiders, Caleb, but at least in my head, I like that move.
To me, I've just been so on the shitter Sanders to the Raiders, making so much sense that it just doesn't feel right to have anybody else there.
Fair.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I almost feel like this quarterback class is so strange because there are more teams with open quarterback spots than there are quarterbacks to fill it. The only rookie quarterbacks that will be starting games next year are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Those are the only two. There will not be any more. Even Shedeur I've seen falling down boards. There's that. And then the free agent class, it's like Sam Darnold and just like a bunch of either washed up or borderline starters. But even then, it's just hard to attribute like any of these quarterbacks anywhere because I'm just like, I don't know that like if I'm a team who's signing Sam Darnold, I'm not throwing my arms up in celebration. Quite honestly, I'm kind of like, oh,
fair.
okay, like it's just like like I don't really know what we're doing.
But that's kind of
it's
why
just
I
so,
like the Raiders if they don't go with Shedeur or if they don't go with Ward or something.
maybe, but I feel like when you're with Pete Carroll, like I think you're trying to win faster than you might expect. That's why I like the idea of a rookie going there because Pete Carroll's on a 3-year contract and he's 70 whatever.
Yeah.
Like he is like he's not going to have very much time there, and I think they are putting a lot into his tenure to say like, let's turn the Raiders back into a contender. Let's turn them into what they used to be decades ago, right? And Sam Darnold, I think whatever team picks Sam Darnold, even though he went 13-3 last year and whatever, I think it just feels like you're treading water if you're getting Sam Darnold. And I don't know if that's an insult to him. Like he had a great season, but I will, before we move on from Sam Darnold, want to pose one more question to you: is what do you think the odds are that he stays in Minnesota, and they just say, let's bring him back another year?
I would do it if I was Minnesota, but then again, it really does just depend on how high you are on JJ McCarthy. Because if Darnold isn't coming back, and you're deciding that now, McCarthy's your starter. There's no other road. Like you can't not have Darnold. You can't let go of Darnold and bring in another guy because you don't think McCarthy's ready. If you don't think McCarthy's ready or you have any doubt there, give Darnold a 1-year contract. If that's something that would even, like, Darnold would even be interested in. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like there has to be more options. You need to be 100% sure on McCarthy. And I don't know if I am, honestly. Like, quite frankly, he didn't give us a chance to really see what he's made of next year. But if I'm the Vikings, I mean, the kid, I don't know. I don't know. It's such a tough spot when a rookie goes down like that, and then you have Darnold having the season that he had, right? Like, I think it's just such a tough spot for them. Because in one case, if Darnold goes on and has a really, really, like the same year he had this year, without the inconsistency somewhere else, and McCarthy kind of flops a little bit or struggles, fans are going to be calling for your head. It's kind of as simple as that. Yeah, it's a big choice to be made for whoever the GM over there in Minnesota is. I think, for me, I think the safe pick is to bring back Darnold.
So you'd be advocating for them to bring back Darnold.
I think
then.
So. I think that's where I'd probably. But then again, I'm saying that because I do think it would be the safer move.
I think you just have to, like, it's entirely based on what they see in the building and what they've seen out of JJ McCarthy, because you're right and we don't know, but they should have some form of a better idea than we do. Like, that's what, when Kwesi makes that decision, it's got to be like, have we liked what we've seen out of JJ McCarthy enough to not sign him back? And that's a question only they can answer, and that's what makes it such a conundrum for everybody on the outside, because we have no idea. We have no idea what the evidence for either side of that is.
Okay. I don't know how, like, official this is. I just want to bring it up because I think it's really funny. An insider is speculating. It doesn't even say who's speculating this. Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network is speculating that Kirk Cousins could potentially go back to the Minnesota Vikings. What the actual fuck? What?
That's very strange. I don't know how much, like, worth I'd put in that. I mean, Daniel Jeremiah is a pretty reputable source, but, like, I don't know. That feels like if he's going back there, he's going as a backup, as a mentor to JJ McCarthy, right?
You know what?
And maybe that
he's not going back as the starter. Absolutely, I think that needs to be the case because he can go back and he can be El Kirko and just be the locker room guy and kind of teach JJ McCarthy the Minnesota ropes. But you can't bring him back as this is the way we're gonna do it. We're gonna get rid of Sam Darnold. We're gonna bring in Kirk Cousins, and just like that, the team's fixed. Even if JJ is not ready, like I don't think that could be the logic to why you want to bring Kirk back. Then again, what would Kirk Cousins? I don't know.
Kirk Cousins would not command very much. Kirk Cousins, I compared Aaron Rodgers to the Russell Wilson after the Denver situation. But I do think, as much as I hate Rodgers, he's in a better place than that. Kirk Cousins would be much more like that, where it's like you are getting paid a veteran minimum salary because you're already getting paid like $50 million if the Falcons decide to cut bait on you. Yeah, from that perspective, I see it, but it would just be it would be strange to see that. I think with Kirk, the most likely thing is that he stays in Atlanta. I don't know how much of a choice he has in that matter. Let's start ripping through some of these because we've still got a few names left on this list. Stephon Diggs to wrap up the receiver conversation. Obviously, big name acquisition by the Texans that didn't work out. That's not necessarily Stephon Diggs or the Texans' fault. An injury thing that was just really unfortunate. That kind of derailed a lot of the hope that we had on the Texans at the start of the season. At least that was the start of it, among other issues. But Stephon Diggs is an interesting case because I think even at the end of his Bills tenure, we were all kind of looking at him saying, like, maybe he's not quite the player that he used to be, and a little bit of a depreciated asset, but it was still a big deal to have him say go to Houston, and now I feel like he's not talked about at all. And so I think that's a bit of an interesting thing. Like, even in this list that we've been referring to from The Athletic, I think he's in tier 2 or 3 even. He's not very high up on the list. He's definitely the third receiver down. Okay, he's in tier 2. But still, it's like for a player like Stephon Diggs a couple years ago, you'd be shocked to not have him in that top 5.
Yeah. And just to throw an immediate team out here, because I was curious to see where he was going to be rumored to go. And the number one team that I'm seeing across multiple sources here, that as one that one person even calls a match made in heaven, Stephon Diggs to the Dallas Cowboys.
Why? Why would that happen? Like, I don't know. That doesn't make any sense.
His brother
to me.
plays there.
I guess.
It's the family thing. And that always works in football. Every time. Because love wins the Super Bowl. Just kidding. We learned that this year that is not true with Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift cannot win you Super Bowls, neither can family, I guess.
Well, I mean, other than this year, it worked out pretty well for them. I don't know if that's the argument you want to make. But, no, I don't know. I guess I didn't think about Trayvon Diggs being there too. I guess that part of it makes sense. But just like the Cowboys are a sinking ship in my eyes that are going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL to watch for the next 5 years. And if I'm Stephon Diggs, I don't know, man. I don't want to go there. Dak Prescott's not the worst person in the world to be catching passes from. But,
No.
yeah, I don't know. I'm almost like, if I'm the Texans, I'd want to look into bringing him back. Like, you want to see what you have there. The Texans did recently acquire Christian Kirk for a 7th-round pick, so I wonder if that kind of gets them off of
I feel like
getting
that's
Diggs
the
back. I don't know. Maybe. Is that a replacement, or was it just kind of because the Jags announced they were cutting Christian Kirk, and then the Texans threw in a 7th, and they were like, okay, you can have him. Like, is that, I don't know. Did the Texans do that just because they wanted to pick up an asset for cheap? Or is that the Stephon Diggs replacement? Hard to know.
Yeah, it is hard to know for sure. I'm not really too sure. I think I don't disagree with you at all. I feel like it'd be the type of situation where the Cowboys want Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs does not want the Cowboys. But who knows? I mean, it seems like a lot of players go to Dallas just to play for the Cowboys at a certain point. There is that factor too. You never know. Maybe Stephon Diggs is really feeling that, like, Cowboys pride or whatever causes the Cowboys. You know the Cowboys.
America's team, baby.
America's team. There you go. I mean, whatever it ends up being. I don't know. I can't really think of any other big teams that.
Looking at the cap list, I mean, it's a lot of the other same destinations we brought up for Godwin and Adams.
Fair.
One on here that I hate, that would just make me sick to my stomach, is the Rams. They have $55 million in cap space.
Okay.
And they also are getting rid of Cooper Kupp. Is he a guy they bring in to replace him? Who knows?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, he wouldn't need to be the number one there at this point. Like, I don't hate that necessarily for the Rams. Like,
yeah.
Like, it does make sense.
I mean, I'd hate it as a Seahawks fan,
Yes,
which is probably a sign it's not the worst move in the world.
I get that. I
No,
just
but
mean,
if I hated it, it's probably a good move for them. Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if they went after one of these big receivers after getting rid of Kupp, just because they're bringing back Stafford, and it feels like once they get rid of Stafford, that's kind of the end of the road for them.
I will say, as a Seahawks fan, I feel like the Rams getting Diggs is probably better than them getting Adams or
Godwin.
Yeah, I do think that is a better option as a Seahawks fan, not a Rams fan.
No, I will agree. We wouldn't be doing this podcast if you were a Rams fan.
This would have ended after like halfway through episode 1. Somebody would have gotten taken behind a shed.
Yeah, and it wasn't about to be me.
Yeah.
Speaking of my irrational Seahawks fandom, I'm just going to get the quick rant out of the way on, we've got a couple players left on here. Ernest Jones is one I just wanted to talk about because I just wanted to let it be known publicly that if the Seahawks don't bring back Ernest Jones, then it's probably the most ridiculous thing they've done in the past 5 years. Never before in my life have I seen a single player change the defense more than Ernest Jones did. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in the NFL. This list has him at like 22nd, and I think that's a disgrace. He is a top 10 player on this free agent list, in my opinion. He is like very clearly like the first, no disrespect to Jordan Brooks, but the first worthy looking replacement that we've had to Bobby Wagner since he left that first time. Just one of the most like somebody in terms of somebody who knows how to play that scheme. I don't know, man. If he doesn't come back, I'm gonna like prepare for a Seahawks rant that you've never seen before, because that would just be like negligence.
And we've seen a lot of Seahawks rants that we have seen before, so that's how you know it's going to be bad.
That's true. That's true. I get more angry about this than I would about the DK one. The DK one isn't the Seahawks' fault. That's just DK. Like, we went into that conversation. If they don't re-sign Ernest Jones, who has very clearly said that he wants to be in Seattle, oh man, John Schneider, I'm coming to Seattle, beat your ass.
Yeah. I mean,
anyway, do you have anything to say on Ernest Jones, Simon?
Not necessarily. I think it's the type of thing where it's a 25-year-old linebacker. It kind of fits with their timeline a little bit. I mean, you've already given a testament to how important he was to Seattle's kind of defense this season. I feel like it would be pretty dumb to not bring back a player like that. Obviously, the price needs to be right and all that, but I mean, yeah, I think he's the type of guy where I wouldn't be surprised if you just see a re-sign. Mainly just because of the age. You never know. Maybe it's a personal choice at that point that he does not want to be in Seattle. You never know. But I think that if he wants back, you have to bring him back.
Yeah. And I think he publicly came out at the end of the season and was like, I want to be a Seahawk. So again, if John Schneider, watch yourself. That's all I'm saying. We'll wrap it up quick here. We've just got a couple more players in the trenches. Joey Bosa's one that he got cut by the Chargers, and again, kind of at the end of his career. I think this one's really interesting. The one that jumps out to me as a fit for him is just going to play with his brother in San Francisco. I feel like that's been floated for like 5 years, and now it's has a chance to happen. Would that be something San Francisco does? Because he has not necessarily been the same player.
I mean, I think it depends on the price. I think anything is possible for the right price. I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't do it if he was willing to sign like for nothing. Do you think that Joey Bosa at this point would still get a big contract?
No, I don't think it's going to be. So I don't know how old he is, but I feel like with Joey Bosa, the issue has always been injuries too. He has never been a very consistent player in terms of staying on the field. Joey Bosa will be, by the time the season starts, he'll be 30.
Okay, yeah. ESPN was giving me the birth date, not the actual age. Simon doesn't know how to number. But, yeah, I think with him, I think it's exactly that. He's a veteran linebacker, guy who can rush the quarterback. It almost makes too much sense for him to go play with his brother. The 49ers are probably going to be a contender again this year. It's a chance for Bosa to go play for a good team, play with his brother. Caleb, you seem to disagree with that, but the 49ers are a contender every year for some reason. So.
They're last place in the division, a contender, as they're like fire sailing off their receivers and.
Shut up, Caleb. I know everything about the NFL. You don't.
And they're gonna have to pay. This isn't a shot at that. This is just a Niners hate. Like I can't fuck the Niners. Go pay Brock Purdy $100 million and take that up the ass. Stupid ass Kyle Shanahan loser. Fuck. Take your Joey Bosa. Double your white supremacist count. That's okay.
Yeah, you know what? At least you made the joke and not me. I was gonna say that they were building the most racist D line that we've probably seen since the '80s. Like.
Yeah, I think that the joke I saw online was, another January 6th rioter just got released. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
And enough politics for the AAA podcast.
Anyway, we can move on to our last player on this list. So this was the Athletics #1 player, and I mean, I totally get it. It's just not a flashy name because he's an offensive lineman. But I think if you pick up this player then I think you're kind of immediately set at tackle for like however long you have this contract for, and that's Ronnie Stanley. I believe he's been with the Ravens his entire career,
Yes.
and has been just like, one of those players you just forget about because on the offensive line, that means you're doing a fantastic
I was
job.
gonna say, you want to forget about your offensive lineman.
Exactly. So yeah, I think wherever Ronnie Stanley goes, he will be a key player. It's not going to be like the one like everybody will be talking about the receivers or the quarterbacks, but it's going to be probably the one that makes the most impact. And I think it's a good fit to be the number one free agent in this class in terms of talent. I don't know where he'll go though. Like I'm sure a lot of teams need tackle, but
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be an interesting thing for sure. I think the first thing I looked up when I looked up Ronnie Stanley was this. So I thought I'd just share this image with the world. I feel like I'm doing a service, but I think
you know the context of that image, Simon. If not, you have some Googling to do.
do I? Oh, are you serious? Did I just do it bad? Oh no.
You didn't do it well. No, you didn't do it bad. That's for other people to do their own research on what that picture of Steve Smith is about.
Wait. Fuck. God damn it. God damn it. Am I? Oh, okay. Shit.
I'm sure it's probably if you look up Steve Smith, it might be one of the
Okay.
first things that comes up. Yep, it is the first. Yeah.
Is
yeah,
it?
is
Oh crap.
Yeah.
All right.
Just go to news and yeah, you'll see it.
Okay. Oh. Oh no. Oh fuck. Okay. Well, all right. Well, that's on the internet forever. That's good.
Oh, that's funny.
This is gonna be the last time that I ever go to Reddit for images because I saw funny. It's gonna be the last time. Never again. Okay. Well, anyway,
Yeah,
remember when
I
we were
mean,
talking
that's probably-
about Stanley?
Yeah. I mean, according to Steve Smith, re-signing with the Ravens is a strong possibility. That's what we were talking about, everybody.
Yeah.
That's what we were.
According to Steve Smith.
Yeah. Well, Steve just has really strong opinions on the Ravens' offensive line. That's why we're so. But anyway, I do think that's a possibility because obviously he's been there his whole career. You almost wonder if it's one of those guys that's just like a Walter Jones or Joe Thomas type figure where it's just the offensive lineman who's with the team for 20 years or whatever. I think it'll be interesting because I think if you're the Ravens, you want him back really badly. But if you're another team, it's just like such a good boon to your offensive line. I don't know. Are there any other teams that jump out to you?
I mean, the Chiefs are the big one after that Super Bowl. I mean, why wouldn't you go after Ronnie Stanley if you have the money? He's gonna be the big guy who could potentially shore that up. It's the same thing we talked about it. We talked about it when we talked about the Super Bowl. But for the Chiefs, their big thing this offseason has to be getting that offseason or getting that O-line better for this next season. And Ronnie Stanley does that. Absolutely. So I think that makes sense. Any team that needs offensive line help could potentially be one. I don't know how much Chicago could potentially be one. I know obviously that was a big thing going into this offseason. They did just make that one trade with the Chiefs. I remember seeing not that long ago.
Yeah, they got Joe Tooney and they got
go.
Jonah Jackson.
So at
they
point,
have been beefing up.
So at this point, I guess, how much do you need Ronnie Stanley? But I don't know.
Well, no, you still do because that shored up in the inside of their own line.
Well, there you go.
But their tackles are still Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright, who are okay, but not Ronnie Stanley level. So I think that's a good spot. I think the only issue I have with the Chiefs as a landing spot is just the money side of it. I don't think they have the money for it because they're barely cap compliant. So that's one that I'm like, I think in terms of team fit, they'd obviously love to have him, but there's gonna have to be some moves there. The one team that I really like as a spot for Ronnie Stanley if he does not go back to the Ravens is the Washington Commanders. I think it's been talked about so much in terms of how much cap space they have this offseason and how many kind of big moves they can make. They just traded for Deebo Samuel, and you're got to try to look in cash in on Jaden Daniels. If you can get a tackle like Ronnie Stanley to shore up that O-line, oh man. Like, I think that's probably one of the best investments you can make with that free agent money, in my opinion.
For sure. I mean, I don't necessarily remember them having too many issues with their O-line, but it doesn't hurt to get even better. That's for sure. Especially with a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, it doesn't help. Or doesn't not help to just get better in that spot, for sure. It's not a bad use of that type of money.
Yeah, because I just think, like, when you're building a team, if you want to sustain that long-term success, trying to make your... Because, I mean, that's why teams like... The teams that are the best in the conference that the Commanders are going to have to try to overcome are the Lions and Eagles, the teams with the two best O-lines in the sport. And so, yes, I don't think that the Commanders' O-line is bad right now by any means, but to shore it up to try to get it to the same level as those two other teams, I think that's got to be a motivating factor.
Yep, for sure. I mean, again, if you have the money, it doesn't help, or it doesn't hurt. Jesus, it doesn't hurt to get even better in that spot. It's almost 11 p.m. where I am. I'm tired. So I might need caffeine for this last segment. That might be the lesson here.